Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Dev. In previous episodes, we've dabbled in using GameMaker's pathfinding for various purposes. We've also used tiles in many recent projects, to an incredible degree really, which should be expected from someone trying to learn, and learn we shall continue with today's plan. Today we're going to continue messing with GameMaker's pathfinding algorithm. We'll do this by learning to use said algorithm with tiles, because as we've already learned, tiles are much more performance friendly than objects. We'll do our best to not break anything, and if we're successful, we'll assess whether we want to continue pursuing the larger potential vision I've got brewing in the old noggin. Sounds like a plan, so let's get to the coding. As you should expect by now, in order to work with a grid, one must build a grid. So our room was broken down into 16 by 16 cells and fed into creating a motion grid. Tiles were also set up, and then it was time to get to work. In the step code for our HUD, a left click check was made. In the left click event, a wall tile would be placed in the nearest cell to the mouse's position. And then we'd use some code making its Let's Dev debut, the add cell function. This function marks a cell as quote-unquote forbidden, aka wall. It's basically the tile map equivalent of checking for wall objects like we have in previous pathfinding experiments. And a quick test showed all was well, and that so far nothing seemed to be broken. So next I doodled up some sprites. A hero sprite, which surprisingly will not be controlled by the player. Next up was some loot, and finally a marker to signify the hero's start position. And for now that one's just for testing purposes. Objects for these new sprites were created and spawned into the world. In the hero code, the general pathfinding code we've used in previous projects was applied. However, before allowing the hero to move, I wanted to simply see the pathfinding in action on its own. So if a path could be determined from the loot to the hero, it would be drawn. This ended up working perfectly and really gave some insight into how the algorithm determined the hero's path. However, while this is working properly, it brings up the obvious issue of trapping the hero in a tomb of walls. So back in the HUD, I shifted the code around and added a check for the hero's pathfinding status. If it could not generate a path, the code would no longer allow tiles to be placed, and the only way to continue placing tiles is to create an opening. The results were positive, however, while working to get to this point, I ran into a pretty major issue that I'll go over in a bit. For now, there was a way to prevent blocking the hero from moving, so we could move on. Next, I set up a toggle to have the hero walk its generated path. And when the toggle is set back to false, it would also reset the hero back to its starting position. This way, there wouldn't be a need to reset the room to reset the hero, which made testing different pathing routes much easier. So with things going far smoother than I anticipated, I decided to set up a few other features. I added a border to the world, just in case, and added a pretty primitive zoom feature to the camera, which still needs some work. Theoretically, these features would make tile placement easier on a larger scale, and that's where I called it for this session. On one hand, I'm really surprised that this came together so smoothly. I expected a lot more issues using the add cell function instead of wall objects. The tile system is definitely better, but it has a few drawbacks. The first drawback is the flexibility. Everything has to be tile-based, which means ultimately the best way to use it seems to be for data, and that just adds to the busy work. The second issue is attempting a preemptive pathfinding check. I originally wanted the check for the hero's pathfinding state before the left-click event even occurs. However, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to make that preemptive check without jumping through extra hoops. Extra hoops that may impact performance, which, kind of defeats the purpose of using tiles in the first place. The system I settled on could work, and I have some other ideas, including workarounds that'll smooth out the experience, but nothing beats feedback before making a move, Regardless of the issues, however, I'm actually digging the idea. It's sort of a play on the Dungeon Maker project I worked on a while ago, but instead of creating a level editor, my plans for this project are a lot more involved, which could actually lead to something much cooler if we pursue it. So I think this project will continue in the future. There seems to be a solid idea there, and clearly there's still much I can learn from the experience, so we'll definitely get back to this one. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Let's Dev, so leave a like if you enjoyed the episode, subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already, and leave your thoughts on our start to this new project in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.